Welcome to Environmental Fridays. It is Personal, Season 2. You can learn more about our topics and speakers by joining our Environmental Fridays Facebook group. This series is brought to you by Best Early, the Benton Spirit Community Newspaper, Andrews University Community Engagement Council, GC Scored, Every Piece Matters. Introducing your host, Dr. Desmond Hartwell Murray, and this week's co-host, Dixie Wong. This week on Environmental Fridays, we'll be hearing from Keith Kinch.
All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome again to Environmental Fridays. It is personal. This is Season 2, Episode 10. And so today we have a very interesting topic on greening cities, one that's very relevant. And you'll hear more about our guest speaker, Mr. Keith Kinch from Block Power pretty soon. However, as we normally do, I give a few comments before, and one of them is very exciting. We this week launched our website, and so that's our URL here. And just quickly, I'll go ahead and show you our website. There is the homepage, some pretty cool things, the About page. We have the schedule on here for the rest of our Season 2. You see Green and Cities, then we have the Tobago Eco Tourism on the 25th, Haiti on the 22nd. Something is different there. Anyway, public interest.
Hey, Desmond, I don't know if you intended to show the website, but we're not seeing that.
Oh, you're not seeing the website?
No, I'm seeing the original shot you have with the URL.
Oh, okay.
It says visit our website, but we're not seeing the.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is the homepage for our website. And here is our About page. And I was showing you the schedule for Season 2, all there. Speaker's bio is here. Our partners page. And we'll talk about some of these things going forward. These are some of our partners: University of Southern Caribbean, Mississippi School for Mathematics, Benton Spirit, the Descendants Project, and others could come on as well. We'll talk about those sort of things later on. Here's a news blog page, videos that links us to our YouTube channel, and contact information. Basically, if you are interested as a teacher, student, guest speaker, potential guest speaker, co-sponsor, you could contact us and let us know. Anyway, we are excited about our page here, our website. And so, going back to this, are you seeing the slideshow now? Just making sure.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Okay, good, good. So today, my guest co-host is Miss Dixie Wong. I've known her for a long time. Her husband taught me physical chemistry and instrumental analysis back in the day. And we used to go over to their house at times for lunch as students. And since I came back to Andrews, I've gotten to know her as she's a real estate, a realtor, and an avid environmentalist. So she's a graduate. Dixie Wong is a graduate of Andrews University, where she studied biology, nutrition, and business. She spent the last 40 years or so as a realtor. And over those years, she's taken a great interest in promoting a healthy environment. She's taken courses from the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission and Michigan State University that emphasize things like conservation of water and land. She's also done the Climate Reality Project and is now a member of the West Michigan Leadership Team for Climate Education. So she's spent her life out there as a realtor, but also seeking to incorporate many of the principles of environmental stewardship and concern for the environment. So you'll hear from her soon. I usually also talk really quickly about why we started this. It was mostly to mentor our next generation about the environment. And this has expanded, of course, to include everyone, really, to give information and to encourage people to become more conscious and aware and concerned with the environment. And one of the fundamental reasons is that life and the environment exist in tandem, together, in relationship, in the deepest way. The environment and life exchanges energy and matter. And based on that sort of deep relationship, we should be humble to and be stewards of our environment. So at this point, I'll skip over some of this today. At this point, Dixie, if you could unmute and go ahead and introduce our speaker for today.
Desmond, it's been a pleasure to be friends of you and know you all these years. So thank you for inviting me. And it's a pleasure to present the bio of Keith, our speaker today. Excuse me. He serves as a general manager and co-founder at Block Power. Keith received his undergraduate degree at John Jay College and his graduate degree at American International University. Excuse me. He spent 8 years as a community organizer and 2 years as a deputy field director in New York State for the Democratic National Committee under President Obama's grassroots arm, Organizing for America. He helped advance key pieces of legislation, such as the Affordable Health Care Act in the summer of 2016. Keith led the Solarize Browndale campaign, where more than 200 homes were outfitted with solar panels. Solarize Browndale brought together community partners, residents, and a selected solar installer to successfully demonstrate that solar power can make an impact on low to moderate income communities. It still stands as one of the largest solar projects in New York State history. In 2017, Keith led the partnership with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and the Department of Housing Preservation and Development on community retrofit. It's a New York program to produce over 500 retrofits for 5 50-unit multifamily buildings in the Con Edison's Brooklyn, Queens demand management zone. The project has won a national award, and as it was completed 1 year ahead of schedule. In 2019. They partnered with Con Edison and NYSERDA to launch Green the Bronx, a campaign to help hundreds of multifamily building owners in the Bronx convert their fossil fuel heating systems to clean heating and cooling systems. In part of the partnership, Con Edison and NYSERDA and Block Power will provide engineering, prospect management, customer education, financing, and no money down equipment leases for building owners. He currently resides with his wife and his 2 children in New York.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dixie, for the introduction. And thank you, Desmond, for allowing me and BlockPod to be here. So I have a brief slide presentation. It's a lot of slides. I'm not going to go through all of them. I would love to go through the main ones, and then Desmond, it's okay. I'd love to, have kind of a Q&A and get feedback, because I think that's more important than just me talking. I'm not excited about talking all the time. So
Okay.
I'll go from there. So let me, here's my agenda, who I am, what we do, what we accomplish. That's me, Keith Kinch. Thank you, Dixie, for the update. It's just further background, born and raised in Brooklyn. My parents are from Barbados. So, I'm a first generation to be born and raised here, and excited to be part of the climate industry. Here's a picture of the folks at Block Power. As mentioned, we're a climate tech startup, around since 2014. Our job is to make buildings greener, healthier, and safer. We do that by utilizing proprietary software to project manage, finance, and analyze buildings in cities across this nation. We do that 3 ways, and there's three components to our work, and I want to stay here for a little bit. I mentioned electrification and what that looks like. So right now, there are over 5 million buildings across this country that need to be upgraded. They're either on fossil fuels, they're low to moderate income communities, they're underserved, they're underbanked, and they're a huge health issue. And this is, more important than ever as we're still, coming out of a pandemic. So how do we get these buildings off fossil fuels, electrify them, put solar down? That's the first step. So we're making these buildings healthier. The second step is, how do we make sure we're able to capture carbon emission reductions? How to make sure we're capturing real-time data on these buildings, and next steps. And, we do that as well by installing Wi-Fi. More than ever the last 2 years, we've seen the divides in the country, health, racial, economic, and otherwise. But we also saw a digital divide as well, and BlockPod continues to work on that as well by installing Wi-Fi, community-owned Wi-Fi in communities. Now, the first 2 I mentioned are great, but someone has to do that work, right? So there's 2 components to that. One, we work with local contractors to complete these projects. So we're putting the resources and the money back in the community. We also want to hire locally, especially in historically underserved and underbanked in communities that historically have been denied access to, whether it's construction, clean energy, clean tech, or just this level of workforce. So we work to hire locally. Finally, we also work with mom and pop and local women-owned LGBTQ, veteran, Black and brown-owned businesses as well, to make sure that we're creating economic wealth in those communities and setting a career path for success. So part of the conversation around today is about electrifying cities, and that's what we're doing. And here's a photo of our work here. But essentially, building by building, block by block, how do we decarbonize cities? And in doing so, how we build a clean energy workforce. And we're doing that now in New York City as an example. And I'll get into that in more details. I mentioned the digital divide, and I'll use New York City as an example. I know we've seen this across the country. Obviously, New York City is one of the places that was hit very hard during the COVID-19 pandemic. And through the leadership of Danelle Baird, CEO and founder of Block Power, we were able to put together resources and begin to install low cost community-owned Wi-Fi in key neighborhoods, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, that are historically been underserved, low to moderate income, high asthma rates. And to do so, that meant children at home can learn. It meant that our seniors can do telehealth, and also meant folks can just work in general and find jobs. So, you know, that's important, especially more than ever, where money had continues to become an issue, and paying $95 an hour, $95 a month, $100 a month for Wi-Fi is not sustainable. So being able to pay, you know, $15, $20 goes a long way, when that extra $80 can go other places. So this is our Wi-Fi work, and we continue to do that. We were able to install Wi-Fi in New York City public housing, where we're connecting thousands of families. We're also installing Wi-Fi in private homes across the neighborhoods. And in doing so, as we install those systems and we install electrification systems to remove people of fossil fuels, making that building smarter, and we're able to track real-time data. Talked about workforce a lot. Let me get into it. Last year in New York City, you know, we saw more than ever kind of the beginning of the after effects of the pandemic. And one of the things at that time, Mayor de Blasio and now Mayor Adams is doing is thinking about how we bring people back to work, how we continue to, you know, build our city back up, and how do we also deal with infrastructure. So a program was launched under Mayor de Blasio, which is now under Mayor Adams, to train and place on jobs 1,500 New York City residents. These 1,500 residents were mostly from low to moderate income communities, disadvantaged zip codes, and areas where we've seen an increase in crime, high COVID-19 rate, low vaccination intake rate. In the areas that historically, as mentioned again, when it comes to the building industry, clean energy tech in general, just did not have access. So how do we break through those inequalities? So what makes Block Power running this program unique is that we ourselves are a climate tech company. We have projects that we can train folks on and put them on our job sites to install HVAC, install solar, install Wi-Fi. And also our subcontractors also have the goal, just like us, to hire locally and to complete these projects. And finally, you know, from a straight bottom line perspective, it lowers costs on projects. You know, if, you know, through this program, the city subsidized the hourly wage of workers. So a project that may cost $100,000, that goes down because the cost of labor is subsidized through the city. There are many great job training programs across this country, but very few of them are able to connect to the right employers, because either the training doesn't match what the employer needs, or maybe the employer has historically not hired from certain areas, or just doesn't understand workforce development. That's what makes Block Power unique. We are a climate tech company. We can hire folks ourselves, and we have an employer pool that is willing, ready, and have continued to place people on job sites, run the job training, and train people. So to date, this program, you know, we've trained over 1,500 folks in New York City. As we're talking right now, 400 of them are on job sites across the city, completing, you know, up to 200 projects over the course of the last 3 to 4 months. And we, you know, thankfully have found permanent positions for over 200 residents in New York City. So this is a program, this is something that can be modeled and placed in cities across the country. And we're looking to do this in other places, just like Ithaca, where we're decarbonizing the entire city of Ithaca. So it's important that, you know, this is part of the process of any goal of a sustainable community, or part of any, you know, clean tech revolution. Policy, yeah, because of what we've accomplished. So I mentioned our accomplishments as a company, and I'm going to kind of spend some time on these slides, and I'd love to take some questions in the next 5 to 7 minutes. To date, the company's been around 9 years, thankfully, and we've completed over 1,200 projects across this country, many of them in New York State, but many across this country. And they've ranged from air source heat pumps to solar to lighting and Wi-Fi. And that environmental impact is huge. We're lowering carbon emissions, we're making buildings healthy. And also those building owners now are paying much less to operate those buildings. So long-term, those buildings are able to be sustainable, bottom line sustainable, better for their tenants, better for the commercial tenants, better for the residential tenants. And that's important. In terms of our Wi-Fi, here are the numbers here. Many are in New York City and Oakland, but once again, we're continuing to sign up folks to the ability to get broadband access at an affordable price in historically underserved neighborhoods. So we're focusing on New York City right now and Oakland, where we're looking to expand to other parts of this country. And once again, if we're going to put in a new HVAC system in the building, why not also put in Wi-Fi and vice versa? Let's make sure the building, is upgraded on every level so that folks can breathe cleaner air, have electrified heating and cooling systems. That building owner can lower his or her costs. And there's a Wi-Fi system in place and broadband access in place that everyone can afford and have access to. These are overall numbers. I hinted at them early on, but here's the overall numbers on our workforce development program. And this is in New York City to date. And this is what we've done so far from July of 2021 to today. And this is what we plan to do in terms of our model in Ithaca. And as we go to other cities and go to other municipalities on decarbonization, this is our goal, and though the numbers, because New York City is one of the largest cities, is very high, the goals overall and outcomes will not change. We want to make sure we have a high job placement rate. We want to train as many people as possible. We want to make sure, women historically who have not been involved in this sector have access as well. And, more than ever, in the last 3 years, most of the folks we work with have been unemployed, whether because loss of jobs due to COVID or other reasons. So just something to think about as we talk about greening cities. It's not just actually upgrading the building, we're upgrading the entire community on several levels. And that's the larger social impact that Block Power does as we continue to lower carbon emissions and make cities sustainable. I'm going to stop there, take some Q&A. I wanted to do this quickly because I think in looking at the other great sessions you had before with Desmond, Dixie, and team, and what you guys have talked about, I'd love to hear, whether it's from Desmond and folks on the call, like what are your thoughts just in general on greening cities? What have I said? There's stuff I've definitely missed because I've done this for 9 years and subconsciously I tend to skip other items. But I'd love to hear stuff on that and just the company in general and go from there, because I think that's the best way. I think it will be a funner Friday, even though it's not a real term.
Yeah, that's fine. I totally agree with you. And so I have a bunch of questions already, and I'll also open it up to the audience as well. First, do you have work projects going on in the Midwest, in our area here, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana?
Short answer is yes. I don't have the exact location. I know we have some projects queued up in Illinois.
Okay.
I do know that we are in conversations and we've completed a number of projects in Wisconsin, which is still kind of, in the Midwest area.
It is, yeah.
And we're looking to do a community Wi-Fi pilot in the Milwaukee area as well. So we're definitely looking at that. And then we're also having conversations with folks in Minnesota and also in Colorado on just electrification in general, right? As folks look to electrify systems to make their buildings and their cities energy efficient. So we're excited about that as we expand to the Midwest.
Yeah, the follow-up I have for that is very specific. I'm thinking, especially your workforce, I mean, everything, but your workforce development aspect is something I think is needed in many of these smaller cities. And so right next to us is next to me is Benton Harbor, Michigan. You may have heard of Benton Harbor, Michigan. And yeah, so have you done that sort of thing with smaller cities? I know you talk about New York is big, LA is big. Have you done work with smaller cities?
So I will start with what we plan to do. We plan to do in Ithaca, right? And,
Okay.
and to your point, the kind of big 8-10 cities in the country don't match what America looks like, right? New York, Seattle, LA. Ithaca, in a sense, looks like America, right? The way it's set up, the towns and cities. So that's kind of our next step in regards to a large scale workforce. We've done it to a small extent, on a kind of block by block, very small neighborhood size scale, with some pilot projects in Philadelphia a couple of years ago. We are going to do it in Milwaukee in regards to our community Wi-Fi work. And we also looking to do it, just in general in Michigan. I think to your point, a lot of this work though is centered around climate change and climate tech. That's not what is going to move people, because some people just are not going to listen once you use the term climate change. It's a very polarizing term. So when we talk about workforce excites everyone, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum. Everyone wants folks to go to work, do well. So we're talking about building upgrades and infrastructure on workforce, and that's gonna scale, right? So that's what our plans are. That's what we're doing, and then we're also looking at Georgia as well. So we're going to spend a lot of time in the Midwest, thankfully, over the next 1 to 4 years. And to your point, there's a lot of opportunities in quote unquote smaller cities, right? That the impact could be so large, because if you can get a large scale project, it affects the entire,
Yeah, it would. The
Yeah.
impact would be great. So we need to talk offline, and more specifically, we could introduce you. I have a team here. We have a team here with Princella Tobias and Benton Harbor Team Solutions. They would definitely be able to connect you with the city manager, all that type of stuff. So we could talk more about that offline. But Chantel from Trinidad has a question. Chantel, you could unmute. It's in the same vein. Chantel Cummins.
Yeah, Chantel, yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just wondering if you have any intentions of bringing such an initiative to the Caribbean, because we can definitely benefit from something such as this.
Definitely. If you're able to help me open an office in Trinidad and Tobago, or even Barbados, right away. But professionally speaking, yes. Obviously, the Caribbean is in the front lines for climate change, right? Literally, right?
Yep.
When I was 15, I thought about when I got older, I'd retire to Barbados. And then now, as I'm quote unquote old, I realize Barbados may not be around when it's time for me to retire. Or if my grandkids want to visit me, they may have to swim over. So I do. And I love Prime Minister Mia Mali. She's done amazing work in Barbados.
Awesome.
So the short answer is yes. And the Caribbean is uniquely positioned in a sense with two types of renewable energy. One is wind, obviously, and then the wind. I'll say three: wind, solar with solar batteries, and then some hydropower, depending on which island you're from.
Right.
So yeah, I've always talked to Danelle about how do we scale it, and Danelle and I both have Caribbean roots. So I always talk to him about how do we scale this in smaller, locales like Barbados, Trinidad, St. Lucia, places where the workforce, that is the component, right? More than ever after COVID-19 pandemic. So yeah, we're looking at it. I would love to make this happen, even on a pilot size. If it's like, let's pick one part of an island, upgrade that part of the island, use workforce would be great. So it's always there. It's always on top of my mind. Hopefully we'll get to it the next year.
Yeah, I just recently learned that, for example, the new government in Tobago has launched a green type initiative. And again, the stuff that you just laid out for us is something that they would be interested in, not only in terms of the environmental impact, but also in terms of getting people jobs.
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk to them. I mean, you let me know, I'd speak to the folks and
Oh, yeah, we'll connect you.
Yeah, and we have, and we know we literally know the concerns each island has, right? Every island is different, but I know Trinidad and Tobago historically has had a lot of opportunity to drill for oil and other things. So there's always been an issue around like fossil fuel and jobs versus renewable energy. And so I understand, I think someone mentioned in the chat, the political power as well is important. But it starts locally. Like for us, building owners trust other building owners, and then they trust, people in the community. So if all of us on the call can speak well about this work, it's great. But I'm going to trust the person next door to me that has the panels up or the HVAC or the systems up more than any one of us on the call. So we can get folks locally involved and build on it, then we can right?
Okay. Rich, you could unmute and ask your question.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Murray. Keith, that's really, really interesting projects. And I work in the K-12 space. I put in the chat that there's some grant money being used to connect K-12 schools to the kind of work that you described. What would you ask of the K-12 schools or folks like that to support more work like you're doing?
So first, I would ask for money, which is always important. I think so. One, let me give two examples. So right now, part of a workforce in New York City, we're doing a drone training program in a elementary school. So the drone training program is twofold. It's actually designed for parents. So the parents come in and they do drone training. And it's not to just like have drones to play around with and be fun. It's actually drone training with the goal of being certified to use drones to do 3D mapping of buildings and to do surveys of buildings that are hard to, get to for, especially in urban communities, right? Urban density. So the ability to use a school, which is like a stakeholder, right? In a community, like here's a school. So you get some parents, hey, you may be looking for work, maybe looking for a second job. Hey, mom and dad, you don't know about drones, that's cool. So now the kids are excited, right? Like, oh, it's toys. No, it's real work. So then now they're learning how to build drones every Monday, starting last week for 8 weeks. And then the final week or so, it's like an obstacle course, but not like for fun. It's like, here's a building, can you navigate? And it's in the gym, you navigate around, you do this and that. And there's a chance to also get work with the drone company. So like, for me, it's like, how do we use the schools to get the parents involved, right? To start the idea of STEM in a conversation. And then the next step is, how do we scale that in the school system in general, right? Because if we can do it with the parents, and the parents have buy-in, then the parents are like, hey, I want this in the school, right, for my kids. And then we have buy-in. And when I say kids, obviously it's that school is K-5. But you're right, when it comes to STEM, you're thinking about kids that are not going to go to college, don't want to go to college, and they can go make a decent wage or make 80, 90,000 in the different fields. The middle school, high school is where we want to train this too, to say, hey, you can fly drones for a living. So I think for me, what I need to do is hopefully in the next 7 weeks, when this is done, have like a package together for this and like begin to like sell it across, obviously New York City, other places. And then two, we need a principal that's like all in, right? The principal we're working with, thankfully, is a friend of mine I've known for like 10 years, right? So she was like, I can talk to my superintendent, whoever's in charge above her. I have access to the school, I'll make it work. So we need buy-in from like that local school to be the first adoptee of the program. Then not just drone, we could do HVAC otherwise, but the drone training is easy because it wasn't a lot of like, do HVAC, do solar. It's like very simple, like here's a drone on the desk, right? And it evolves less insurance. So if you and I want to connect afterwards about that, Michigan is fine. Danelle, the founder of the company, has a lot of relationships in Michigan. And Danelle's always thought about how do we make this into the next generation of like training, right? Hopefully my kids are 12 and 9. So they know about climate change more than me. And I work at Block Power. right? Because that's all they know. This is their battle. This is their fight. So my kids ask me about what am I doing to combat climate change. I remind them I work here, but they don't care. They want to hear other things. So.
Mhm. Yeah, that was a question I had too that follows up. I was thinking if you had internship and fellowship opportunities for students, but that basically kind of takes care of it in terms of what you just described. Maybe you could expand to specifically internships and fellowships, but training students, bottom line, is what I wanted to know if you guys were involved in as well.
Yeah, we are. I mean, in New York State has a, yes, in general, New York State has a program where you can take on interns or fellows that are in college. That if you're a New York City resident, if you're a New York State resident and you go to New York State College, the New York State will reimburse private companies 90% of their costs at minimum wage. So you can take someone for the summertime for 8 weeks and pay them, and then the state will reimburse 90%. So it does help bring new people into the system of like clean tech and clean energy. And obviously it helps the companies have an extra, set of hands and eyes and brain to do work. What I would say is that historically, when that happens, we tend to, find one or two people we want to hire or come back to call back to the company later. I think that's something important across the country. Like, what are we doing to get, fresh eyes and fresh bodies into this industry over the next year or so. The one thing I would say, someone asked a question. I'm sorry we missed them. It was Sandy about Georgia. Yeah, we're looking at Georgia for solar and Wi-Fi. We do have one pilot project we are starting, and we'll probably highlight it more as a company in the next couple of months. But yeah, we're looking to work with Georgia in general, but definitely rural areas, especially around Wi-Fi and renewable energy. Like as always in this country, we always leave rural towns behind. They always last, whether it was like getting electricity in the 30s or 40s, to the electric tractor. So we're trying to get ahead of that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I learned something new. I did not know that was a job. Drone operators, you said?
Yeah, I didn't know either until, look, I learned that 3 months ago, to be honest.
Okay, I learned it today.
There's a company we work with that is producing the software to do the mapping. So once the cameras are done taking pictures, it goes into a system that 3D maps. So the drones could go inside the building and outside the building, obviously. Mm-hmm. And there are companies that will pay people to say, hey, I need to get 10 buildings mapped, right? Mm-hmm. Can you go out, take the drone, map it for me, bring it back, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a way to hire locally, right? Because, as long as, so you don't need to be like, hey, I'm a PhD or it's like, hey, maybe you're 22 and I love playing PlayStation 5 and I'm really good at drones in the game. I'm going to take this training and I'm going to go work and do this. Or maybe I'll start my own company. I'll start my own drone company, me and 5 of my friends, and we'll just map buildings or we'll map cities. So when I first heard about this, I said, at first I was mad because I didn't have this when I was younger. I'd have been flying drones my whole life. But so yeah, and I think that's the difference from the industry. When people think about clean construction or clean energy, they think about a person with a hard hat hammering and drilling the new HVAC system. There are people that just do software. Like someone has to be in the back making sure the EV charger connects to the car. Someone has to be in the back making sure that, when you come home at night, the heat is on already because your phone told you it's going to be 41 tonight and it sets the temperature to whatever you need. So someone's going to be back there clicking on buttons, right? So there's like a software component. There's so many jobs in the industry that isn't just bright yellow jacket, hard hat, come home with steel toe boots. And I'm an example. I'm sitting here. Like, if you ever asked me to install something, it would be a bad decision. Like, that's not going to work. So there's so much to do. And I think obviously for the Gen Z millennial generation, this is their time to feed into that. But then someone like me that's like late Gen X, some of the folks that are baby boomers that are looking for like second careers or looking for a new space, that's where they can go as well, where you already have job experience, you have like real world experience, but like now you want to go something else. you can transition, which many people are doing over the last 2 years, right? What can I do that's new, what's different? What's my second or third career? And this is what folks are doing. A lot of folks in this space that are, are Gen Xers and baby boomers. They're like, oh, I'm in this space now. It's new. I'm trying something different. For the Gen Z millennial, they're like, this is where I want to be. I want to, be innovative and make changes. So it's just a unique space to be in.
But do you have a sense that current high school and college students really know about this type of opportunity? Because I'm around some of them, teaching and all that. I've never heard of this. And so that's an area of education, career education.
Yeah, I think, look, if I had to think about what I thought about in high school and college, I didn't know anything either, because I just wasn't focused on things, right? I think you have to put it in front of them, right? If we're all going to be honest with each other and think about what the versions of ourselves between 17 to 22 looks like, even the most mature level of your life, you probably were not, right? So you have to put it in front of them, almost like, here's some goals here. So the same way I talk about my kids know about climate change, because they learned about it since third grade, right? They did the Earth Day and everything. So we have to have it in the schools, to Rich's point and to Sandy's point. What are we doing to make it part of curriculum? Like, maybe we don't need to teach, the Pythagorean theorem anymore. Who needs it? But we can teach, drone training or other items. So that goes back to what's available for schools. What I would say is that even with the STEM programs now, it needs to be expanded, right? I think the first order of STEM, which was great 5-6 years ago, is very different now, right? Like you and I, we're talking about the drone training. There's like other things that are happening that, like, we have not talked about, like aquaponics. How does it go into food? How do we do solar batteries? How do we make sure, like, hydropower works? We've not talked about wind power. There's like a lot of other places where there's $1 billion industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Bill Gates said that the next 8 or 9, 10 Google companies are going to be out of clean tech, right? The next Google, the next Amazon is going to be clean tech. And that's true. The space is so large and so wide, software, hardware wise. So I think we need to just spend more time talking about it. And it gets, quote unquote, young folks excited, because it's something different. It's not the same 5 or 6 goals they have. I think you're right, man. That if we just need to more work on that.
Yeah. So Hyacinth, I just want to call you up, because in the chat, there are a couple of people already that wants to connect with you guys. So make sure you get that. And I could always connect you with them offline as well. But,
Yeah. We could do that. That sounds, anyone that wants to connect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hyacinth tells us what to do. So I listen to Hyacinth.
I know. I got to know Hyacinth. She made this happen too, man. So Hyacinth, let's see, Sandy, Chantel, and maybe some others are definitely interested in connecting. I think Princella, I think you were saying you want this guy in Benton Harbor. Are you there, Princess? Oh, she's not responding right now. Okay. So yeah, making those connections. Does anybody have other questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. When the drone goes over the building, what kind of things do you measure? Because one of the problems that we're having, I think that this is really truly a big problem, is as we're trying to layer the pieces of material in the building, that we end up getting a moisture being stuck in the walls because we haven't used the right types of material. And is there any way that you can, detect a problem?
Oh man, you're talking about. I'm not. You're talking about like thermal bridging. You're talking about.
Yes, bridging.
Yeah, I've been in this business too long now. I get excited about thermal bridging and cladding. The short answer is yes, and I think it's easier to look at that stuff when it's new construction, right? When it's new construction and you're like at the base level, it's easier. But of course, the pain points across the country is the existing buildings, infrastructure. So the drone 3D modeling is something that you can do in partnership with a walkthrough. So there's a slide I have of, and I ran through it too fast. There's a slide of a gentleman wearing a hard hat and he has a camera on his head. And so that works in partnership with the outside drone training. So the drone outside can fly around the building, maybe fly in parts inside the building and get a 3D model. But we also have a gentleman that puts this camera on his head and walks around the building and goes to those spots you're talking about, those kind of hard to reach spots, and then also takes data on a phone or a tablet. So it gets to the point of like you're right about where are the gaps in the building envelope, right, for heating and cooling and stuff like. Because you're right, that's where the money, literally the money flies out the window. If you've got poor materials between the outside of the building and inside, you get that condensation, right? You lose heating or cooling, then you get mold, and then mold is a particular matter that leads to asthma or other health issues. So yeah, that's a big issue in a lot of urban cities when you've got like brick against like stucco against like cladding against like wood, and then it's like 90. Like today in New York, it's 70 today, but it was like 50 2 days ago. There's gonna be like 50 on Monday. So that kind of expanding and contracting of the building on top of the cooling, that's a big issue. But it's gonna be. There's going to be more innovation around that as well. Like how do we become more innovative to get that? The last thing that's hard about that too is we've never done a good job on data. Like most cities don't have good data on their buildings, right? Especially buildings that are in low to moderate income areas. There's no data on, outside of like building permits and fines. There's no data on the things you mentioned, Dixie. And then also utilities need to do a better job. And they are doing a better job, but more on what data can they have that's publicly available that we can partner with some private data to build out a better model of a building, like not data wise and then externally. So it's real. Thermal bridging is real. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, Dixie, you had a follow-up?
Well, the other aspect of that is the people that are into weatherization. There are people that have been in these programs for about 30 years and are really sort of experts at that. I just wonder how we can get that down to the level of training all the builders and the insulating people, so that some of these problems that we have could go away. I should say wouldn't exist anymore.
It's definitely training. It's one, training, and two is a mindset, right? Massachusetts, New York, California, there are a couple of states that are like really, really ahead of the curve in terms of getting folks to that level quickly. And the industry has, a lot of folks have been around for a long time, like you said, doing 30 years, and we know so folks in New York State. And right now, the state is looking at changing the stretch codes and energy codes across the state to meet the points you mentioned, Dixie. And that goes back to training existing folks who are doing it, but also bringing new folks in. There aren't enough people that are skilled to do it right now, right? If you're saying, hey, Michigan, we need you to do X starting in 2023. But there's only like 25 skilled people to do it, it's not going to happen, right? So you need to then train a whole new cohort of folks to do it while training the old cohort. And then you got to make sure that new cohort is diverse, it's women, it's everyone involved. So those are the two problems, right? So that's something that New York is, and I'm sitting in New York, that's something that, we talk about generally as a state. And, I spend a lot of time working with folks on the state level about this. And that's the concern, Dixie, is like, hey, this is going to be hard. How can the five folks that know how to do this in X city get all the buildings? I'm like, they will not do it. You need to train new people, one, and then two, you need to use software to be innovative. So it goes back to the drone thing. You don't need to have 25 people survey 6,000 buildings by foot. Just get some drones to do it, get some other companies to do it, hire, and then maybe have a person with a camera on their helmet, do some walk around. So anything we scale is like technology, right? More than ever. So we can do that, but that's also, you're right. That's a great thought.
Mm-hmm. Mhm. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a very exciting application of the drone to solve that problem, because I spoke with engineers, and this is a big issue for us here in Michigan. So we thank you.
Yeah, it is. And I look forward to sharing videos and updates on that. We're doing some marketing. We're tracking some videos on it. So I think the last week of the actual drone training is the end of May. So when we have all that, we'll definitely send it around, and we'll make sure that Desmond and everyone has it. So and then we'll and to Rich's point and others, we'll pull out best practices as we head into the summer, so we can scale this, because I do think it, and it's fun. Like everyone wants to fly a plane or something, it's fun.
Right.
So
Yes, that's exciting.
it's fun. I'm going to the last week of the training just to fly the drone. I'm going to be there in May for the final graduation to be there, but I want to fly the drone and see what it is. And I'll be honest, I'll pull my kids out of school and they'll be absent to come to the drone training, because they'll be more excited about flying the drones, and this is what they can do in their future. They can take care of daddy when he gets old. That'd be great.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions from anyone else? This has been really informative. It's connecting environmental stuff to economy, to jobs, to training. That's really cool. That's some really cool stuff you guys are doing.
Just a comment, Desmond. I know this is obviously a very, very valuable tool for some of the Caribbean countries. By the way, Keith, I'm from Tobago, so
yes.
Nice.
Originally, yeah, been here for a while, but in countries like in Trinidad and Tobago, which depends so much on an oil industry and urgently needs diversification of the economy, because if we're going to proceed with green technology, we have to find something else, and to be able to sustain, the economy, these kinds of things are needed. But I think there's a lack of education for the most part. People don't understand what we can do as an alternative. Mm-hmm. So I think programs like yours become very, very valuable in a society like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I agree. I'll go. I mean, we're here to talk. First of all, most people don't know that Trinidad and Tobago are two separate places. That's one. People don't know we have two different governments. Two, you're right. When people think of the Caribbean, they see it as like one monolith. They don't understand there's like dozens of countries with dozens of different forms of leadership, right? And how that works. I mean, to my, my parents are from Barbados, and my brother and sister from Trinidad. So I know Trinidad relatively well in regards to the economy and other stuff. You're right. I think the other thing about not just education, which is important, it's hard if you spent 40 years doing one thing that put a roof over folks' heads and took care of the kids, and now took care of grandkids. Now you're telling us to change. It's very hard to change. Change in general is hard. But now we're saying, to your point, no more oil, or like you said, less dependence on oil, especially in Trinidad where there's so much, right? And you have a more than ever as we're sitting here, right? And across the world, energy prices have gone up because more oil for what's going on and with the conflict around Ukraine and Russia. It's a big issue. And then how do we fix that? How do we show people there's other ways to do it? That's very hard, and it does take leadership too. The leaders have to be like, we're going to do this. It's not going to be fun, but it's that we need to do. And the one thing that always helps is if look at projections of the map. When people look at what are your plans in 20 years in the Caribbean, or what are the plans for 50 years in the Caribbean? I'll go 50 years. People have a lot of goals for a lot of these countries. I mean, I always ask the question, will you be there? Will the countries actually exist, right? Like, there's you ever been to Barbados? I don't know, but if you ever been to Barbados in Bridgetown, and if you go near there'll be the middle of Bridgetown where the port is, there's the land there, right? I used to go, I see it as a kid, and now I went back when I'm an adult now. And my son actually, what is that? So it used to be part of the island. So what do you mean? It says underwater now. When I was 8 or 9, you still can see the land. It was like, you still can see it. Now it's a little further down. I said, that's what happens when islands sink, right? Mm-hmm. And I've literally seen in my lifetime part of the island that was once visible underwater now be barely visible. And that's only like, it's like a 30-year difference. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm in my 40s, so like 30-year difference. So it's like, so I think, and people don't think about that way. And it's difficult to talk doomsday with folks, like, oh, every day's a doomsday, but it's real. Like, especially on the island, it's real. People are surrounded by water in the Caribbean, and there's a water shortage, right? You can't get fresh water, but you're surrounded by beaches. You can't get food, but you live on the island, right? Most islands import their food because there's no fresh water, there's no systems, there's no aquaponics. But then they're worried about cost. So these are painful conversations, are uncomfortable, but you got to talk to folks that way. I'll speak for people from Barbados. We're a little stubborn, so you got to tell people how they are. So
yes. Hey, I wanted to bring in Trina because doesn't some of this stuff with the drones, wouldn't that help in some of the work you are doing as well? It just kind of
we do use aerial imagery. A lot. Yeah. So
tell the audience what you do.
What I in particular do?
Yeah, that you use the imagery for.
So we do that. We use that for many different applications, but we could use it for looking at land use changes. We can look at it to see if there are more, if, for example, urban density, if that's changed. We could look at impacts, environmental impacts. So yeah, I don't use it for the type of application that he uses it, but I could see it's worth.
Are there any classes or courses in Trinidad?
Yes, I actually teach one undergraduate as well as postgrad GIS class.
So you teach them how to use the drones?
I don't teach them how to use the drones. I teach them how to use the images.
Oh, okay. So then that would be another thing that could be added in, is how to.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. It's like map reading. It's like map reading, and that's the future. Like what you're teaching is the future. That's a job in itself. So yeah.
So what you usually have to do with digital images is that you'd have to georeference the image. So you have to get it in a particular, if you have the one landmark, for example, the red house, you have to line that up with the image that you brought. So you have to have a reference map. It's not impossible to do that. So but there's quite a few. It's not that it's not done, but we just have to make sure that it's accurate, whatever information you're gathering from it.
So I mean, aligning what you're doing with a drone education, drone courses will be great. You and Kinch talk.
That'd be great. I mean, what you're doing is amazing. And that is not part of the drone training, but that was part of, on a very basic level, the training we had with a group of folks, with the gentleman with the hard hat with the camera, being able to pull the data down and be able to at least send it over to someone who can read it. So yeah, that's all. Those are all jobs. Like whether it's one person or three people, someone has to do that, because I'm not reading anything. You got to send me the document when it's done. Yeah, so I have to read it.
Yeah. So I did want, as my mic is muted, I did want to ask one question, but I got tied away because we also have online schools still happening in Trinidad. Our kids are not out, so I have to print up my son's teacher had his computer crash. So when you're talking about digital divide, I'm like shaking my head. I'm like, we're living through this. So some kids are not able to have their parents use their phones as hotspots, so they're using it for other applications. Or they had a parent that had to go out to work and they can't go to school that day because they don't have Wi-Fi access. So it's very applicable in Trinidad and Tobago. The divide is real. As this prolongs, the period prolongs, it's just getting worse.
Yeah, I think same thing in Barbados. There's still some hybrid of school as well. Yeah, it's bad when you think about, look, we're sitting in New York City, and like there was the parts of the city that 50% didn't have any broadband access, and you know, allegedly the richest city, whatever they call us in the world. And why? Because they couldn't afford $97 a month or $100 a month. Or I'll be honest, like when the pandemic first hit and they shut down New York City, and I had to work from home, my wife and my kids had we didn't have enough bandwidth. Like to your point, like I couldn't work and my wife work and my kids be online, right? So we had to I had to upgrade my system, which threw my bill off crazy. And I'm just like, okay, well, if I'm having problems, you know, what happens to the, you know, the rest of the folks that are, you know, not, thankfully not, you know, I have like $2. So I, you know, that's it. But that's a big deal. And I only have 2 children. There are people that have 4 or 5 children, and they're different. So you're right. The pandemic wasn't just health. Like it was like health, it was racial, it was economic, it was digital divide, and it's still there. And like, we still don't want to talk about it because it exposed so much in the
all
2
of
years.
the problems. Yeah.
And obviously it hurts the kids more, right? You know, we're adults, so we're used to pain and suffering. So we're built around to navigate it. The children, we don't know what they'll have to deal with over the next decade, right? What they've lost in the 2 years, or what they've gained, but more what they lost, right? So that's an example, you know. Then I've been able to not been able to learn because your parents go to work. That's crazy. Like, how are you choosing between education and work? So yeah, like we're willing to work with Trinidad, a lot of those quote unquote smaller islands. It's really about like it's infrastructure. It's just building out some stuff that's there already. It isn't like a huge issue. I mean, you got Digicel and everyone down there. You just got to put something together, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, all of the sort of basic industries in the Caribbean could be immediately upgraded, right? Agriculture, fisheries, the oil, whatever could be immediately upgraded by, you know, including this sort of technology into it. So anybody else has comments, questions? This has been a great conversation, Keith.
Well, I'm glad. I always get nervous when there's a series. I don't know who I'm following.
No.
I don't know what the last person did. So that's why I checked the video to see who was better than me. And then
you sound like Kobe.
Exactly. My Kobe Black Mama mentality. I had to watch the video.
You sound like Kobe, man. Kobe was a student of the game. Yes.
Yeah.
No. You did you, and you'll be fine. And you can
authentically you.
And I'll look at the audio and video later, and then I'll have the Black Power team tell me how good or bad I did, because they have different opinions on it. So
hey, Keith, this is not about good or bad, really. You know, most of the people have had various niches, and all have been very, very valuable. I've attended most of them, actually. So you did a great job. Don't worry about the grade.
Yes, Rich, we could do a session just on comic books. If it's like, but it'll probably be 2 hours because I'm a diehard comic book geek.
Yeah.
So it would be, but we couldn't record that because I would get very excited and exasperated. So I love it. That's my only way to stay sane, is to read comic books.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, man. If there's no other questions at this point, we could bring it to a close. But yeah, this has been really good. It's different from some of the others that we have listened to and been involved with, but it's still very important, eye-opening. I did not know about that entire job market, essentially. And it's something that we need to talk to our students about. Like, dude, you can do this. You know, this is something to look at, even if it's on a part-time basis too, right? Like, you're going to school,
Yeah.
you have the certificate, and you're bringing in a few funds on the side, doing some of this stuff. That's really cool. Thank you so much, Keith.
Thank you for the opportunity. Hope everyone have a safe day, safe weekend, and hope your brackets didn't get busted that bad. I mean, St. Peter's just destroyed everyone yesterday.
Yes. And thanks to Hyacinth as well. She was really on top of things, getting this all together. Yeah.
You're absolutely welcome.
Hyacinth is from Dominica. She's also looking to put
I'm
Wi-Fi.
in Dominica right now.
Dominica, sorry, yeah. And with no Wi-Fi, hotspot and a bike.
So
running on a bike to keep the Wi-Fi running.
Connect us up with Dominica. We'll do something from there. You got connects there, right?
Yeah, we have to.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Care. All right, you too.
Hey,
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dixie.
Oh, thank you, Desmond. It was a very
Thanks to the Team Solutions for coming and supporting. Thank you, Sandy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.